This is an awesome format. We sell beer all around California primarily, and we just started selling beer out here. And there's not many opportunities you get a chance to go talk in front of a great group of people like this who are excited to engage you on your passion and your beer. So thanks for all coming out, and feel free to stop me at any time if you guys have any questions. Feel free to talk with me. So I'm coming out from California. We started selling beer about 3 weeks ago out here, and we've been really shocked with the reception and how much people are clamoring for good beer out here. It seems like everyone out here has an appreciation for great beer, and one thing that Chad was talking about was the style of beers that we specialize in. We specialize in craft lagers. So it seems like you guys really have a appreciation for a lager style of beer. It's kind of the home of the American lager, with Budweiser being around here. And so it really started checking off all the boxes as we were looking to expand outside of California. We also have some partners here that live here, so it just kind of really added up to a great opportunity for us to start bringing our beer outside the state. Sometimes we can even get our beer here quicker than we can to San Diego just through some of the relationships we have. So even though we're shipping it halfway across the country, you guys are still getting fresh product, and we're excited to be bringing it to you. So Chad wanted me to first talk a little bit about myself and how I got to be part of the brewery. I'm one of the managing partners and co-owners of the brewery. And I grew up in Davis, California, and that's where the brewery is. It's about halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento. We have a university town there. UC Davis has one of the top brewing fermentation science programs in the world. A lot of the brewers of the beers you guys drink, even locally here, are brewed by graduates from the program. I was actually at Schlafly not too long ago. One of the brewers came out and patted me on the shoulder and said, "Love your beer. I was out there for your guys' class a couple years ago." So we have a great relationship within the industry and really try to pride ourselves on leveraging that into the quality and the innovation of our beers. All of our brewers are graduates from the Master Brewing Program, and it really allows us to have a quality standard that we're excited about. The lager beer is a difficult style of beer to make. It's a cold fermented beer. It's nuanced, so any flaws really shine within it. So it's something that I personally was really excited to move forward with and to be a part of. My first beer I ever had was a Pilsner, actually from this brewery. Don't want to say the age, but I was pretty young, and my grandfather is from Germany, and he was really excited when this brewery opened because it started off as a German lager brewery, specialized in German style beers, and that's really where the name comes from. Sudwerk is a Bavarian slang term that means southern factory, but in the industrial times, all the factories in the south of Germany were breweries. And there were so many of them, every town even had multiple Sudwerks. So you'd go down, fill your jug up with some beer, have some pints with your friends and family, and bring it back home, and kind of do that every day. And they really wanted to the founders wanted to recreate that beer culture in Northern California. So in 1989, they built a German brew hall and brewery, brought over a German brewmaster who was fifth generation brewmaster or brewer out of, I think, Paul Launer. And he got tired of brewing Paul Launer beers, wanted to experiment with more of his own styles. And so he came over, and they resurrected a German brewery with traditional brewing equipment, traditional recipes, and imported all the ingredients to really try to become America's answer to imported beers. They thought that when German-style beers and imported beers traveled, they got tired and didn't taste the same as when they enjoyed them in their home countries. So they really wanted to make fresh, high-quality German-style beers in Northern California. And it really started as a hobby that turned into a very successful hobby. They were selling more beer over the counter than anywhere else in North America in the first couple of years. And at the same time, that success, they started expanding, and they're in their 80s. And so that's when I came along. I grew up drinking the beer. It was a hometown brewery, and they were looking to pretty much close it down. The second generation already had careers. They weren't as interested in it. So it was an opportunity for us to keep our local brewery alive, as well as really start to pioneer and push out a style of beer that we couldn't really find very often, especially in the craft segment. It's really hard to go out and find high-quality craft lagers out there outside of your macro beers. And so this was an opportunity for us to really champion that. So all the beers you're going to try tonight are actually lager-style beers. We have some traditional German-style ones that we've been making since 1989. And then we started building off of that German lager platform and bringing in some different flavor components and brewing techniques to give you a totally different experience to a lager. So our mission is really to redefine the American lager, become California's craft lager brewery, and showcase a style of beer that typically you don't get from a craft brewery. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Still brew the hard way. So yeah, that. You guys seen the Budweiser commercial and everything like that? so, so yeah, I mean, something about lagers, once again, is that they're nuanced in flavor, they're cold fermented, and any issue or problem that you have with the beer will really shine through it. So you really have to be on top of your quality, on top of all the science that backs the artistic side to brewing. And so that's where we really are trying to strive and showcase this foundation of lagers that you typically can't get from imported lagers, from macro lagers, or even from a lot of the craft breweries around. So this first one we have in our hand here is our California dry hop lager. You can see it's a golden color, pale color. It's started out as a Munich Helles lager. It's the first beer we ever brewed in 1989. It's one of our favorite beers. It just wasn't as relevant to the marketplace, so we thought it'd be a great platform to build in a West Coast hop profile on top of. So what we try to do with this beer was really create our everyday drinking hoppy beer. We grew up drinking a lot of pale ales, IPAs, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, Lagunitas IPA, Stone IPA, but we find ourselves getting worn out by the hops after a while and going back to our macro lagers. So what we wanted to do is introduce the West Coast hops to a Helles. Have another sip. Cheers, guys. So real quick, something I jumped over, we started out as a traditional German brewery, and when we got involved, we started taking that German platform and building on it. So on our sign right here, you can see our logo, and it's the Brauerwappen, or the brewer coat of arms. So there's different versions of it, but this is in the middle, spent grain, or mash paddle, spent grain shovel, and bung hammer. So these are the tools of the brewer, and it's our homage to the brewing industry. And then we introduced a new logo just a couple years ago to really tie it back to our locality. So on my shirt, and you can see here in the corner of the box, is a bear on a bike. And this is California Bear riding the Davis bicycle. Davis is actually the bike capital of the U.S. We have the Bike Hall of Fame there. And so we really wanted to bring the brewery back to its locality and really start developing styles that represent the locality of the brewery, Northern California, and what we're trying to achieve with the new beers we're coming out with. So next beer we're pouring is our Pilsner. And our Pilsner is a Northern German style Pilsner. And it is a style that's going to be a little bit different than your Czech style Pilsner or your macro Pilsner. It's have a little bit of a hoppier bite. It actually has 35 IBUs in it, where this one has about 28 IBUs. So it's actually a hoppier beer than the first beer, but it's going to be a little bit smoother and crisper than your first one. Yep. For sure. So I talked a little bit about UC Davis and the brewing program they have there. We also have White Labs, which is for your home brewers. They're a yeast manufacturer, and their founder was Chris White, graduate from the UC Davis program, and he pretty much revolutionized the yeast industry and for brewing and now for wine and for distilling. And he created a liquid yeast. All yeast before that was a powdered yeast, and it's a yeast that really does well with fermentation. It's a lot healthier when it comes into the beer. So he's created a R&D lab at our brewery where he's doing a lot of experiments and working on creating a machine and other projects that allow the quality of the yeast to be a higher level, and also allow brewers to easily access their yeast at different quantities and sizes that they need. So inside of the brewery, we have an R&D lab there for White Labs, and we get to work with them on a lot of good projects, and it's a good relationship to have because we need yeast to make beer. He needs wort to make yeast, and so we do have a little bit of a trading going on there. It works out real well. And that's one of the characteristics to our beer is the lager yeast profile is a profile that doesn't really come through in the beer. It's supposed to be more in the background, where ale yeast profiles have a little bit of a fruitiness to them, a little bit of esters that come across to them, make them a little bit more flavorful, a little bit more robust in flavor. Our lager yeast is a house yeast that came over actually from Germany. One of our partners spent his life traveling the world, visiting breweries and collecting different strands of yeast. He has a little over 3,000 different yeast banked at UC Davis, and he brought in one day this yeast strand and said, "This is my favorite yeast I've ever brewed with. I've never been able to use it in my previous jobs, but I've always loved this yeast. Don't mess it up. I have one vial of it." So that we started testing that yeast out. It started bringing really clean fermentation profiles to all of our beers, and the Pilsner that you're about to try is a great example of a clean fermentation profile, where the lager yeast really sits in the background of the beer and lets the malts shine and the hops shine. So White Labs really allows us to develop that yeast profile and have a healthy yeast. Our lead brewer calls himself a yeast wrangler. He makes sure that the yeast is always happy. Without happy yeast, you will not have good tasting beer. So that's something that we are really lucky to have. And White Labs is now opening up different satellite operations, North Carolina and around the world, where they're trying to really put their yeast operations next to breweries, where breweries can easily get yeast from them as often as they want, instead of having to ship them out of San Diego. I was talking a little bit about the Northern German style Pilsner. This one's going to be a little bit lighter in color. Yep, this is the right one. A little bit lighter in color, clear. One thing you'll see with all of our beers, you put your finger behind it, you'll be able to see the notches on your finger. It is filtered beer. There is no yeast in any of our beers except for our Gose that you'll try in a little bit. So you're going to get a clean beer, and that's something with lager yeast. Typically, as it ages, puts off some off flavors that aren't as nice as your ale yeast. So you typically want to filter your lager and give it some nice cleanliness. So you'll see this one is the clearest beer, the lightest beer that we make. It's just Pilsner malt. It's a Weirmann malt from Germany. So all these ingredients come from Germany. We really wanted to try to make the most authentic Pilsner style that we could. And the Northern German style is going to be a little bit more bitter, a little hoppier to the end of it than your typical Czech style Pilsner. So if you guys give it a taste, you should have a little bready aroma in it. It comes from the Pilsner malt, and then it will finish. Oh, I was going to say. Okay. Sounds good. I was going to say it smelled a little different. It looked a little different. There we go. So, shocked face, yeah. So you shouldn't have as much of a hoppy aroma in this one. It uses some German noble hops that have a little bit of a spicier herbal characteristic to them than your West Coast hops. So you should get a little breadiness in the beginning and then finish with a nice bitter bite to the finish of it. Once again, real light, crisp drinking experience. It's kind of the more traditional side to our dry hop lager. So for those drinkers who aren't real big on the West Coast hops, you don't like those citrus and pine notes, you like a little more of your traditional beer flavors, this would fit right at home with you. It's a good everyday drinker one. And our dry hop lagers, our flagship, really kind of brings the old and the new forward and really hones in on our mission and our vision. But the Pilsner is right behind it in terms of one of the best sellers. Pilsner is the most widely drank style in the world. It really revolutionized the beer in general. All beer was dark, cloudy before it, and really came out as a style of beer that people could really start drinking on an everyday basis. So, cheers and Prost. What do you guys think of that one? Yeah? What do you guys think of it compared to the dry hop lager? The first one. Like the first one better? Both good? You like the second one? So, yeah, the German noble hops are nice. A little more nuance. Exactly. Those West Coast hops, they really linger a little bit more. The German noble hops really come in at the end to give you a little bit of bite to balance out the maltiness. So both those beers are good, easy drinking beers, and they kind of give you a little bit of taste of different styles. So that kind of shows you an example of how the lager yeast and format can really showcase the ingredients in different ways. So this one you can really taste Pilsner malt and German noble hops in it. The last one you could really taste West Coast hops, and we use a little bit more Cara Munich malts and a little bit of beer malt base. So I think moving on, next beer we're going to have is a Gose. And before I get too much into that beer, talking a little bit more about how we came up with developing that beer. It's not a traditional style Gose like you'll see. So we started. No worries. Cascaderade. No worries. All right. No problem. Yep. Definitely. So as we segue into the Cascaderade, and the Cascaderade real quick is an IPL, and we'll get to that one in a second, but that really starts to talk about our mission and our vision of the brewery, really trying to develop a lager format that is unlike any other lager, and so part of that is coming up with some new styles or new takes on styles, and so the IPA is a really popular style right now, and as you all know, I'm sure you guys all love, and I love IPAs as well too, and we're hoping to get a little bit different drinking experience out of some of our hoppier beers like you have the dry hop lager, but also give you that full hop experience. And so with the dry hop lager, or with the Cascaderade, we try to take that to the next level and really start building on a take on a West Coast IPA. And so the West Coast IPA, really hoppy, really big hop West Coast profiles, has a lot of pininess to it, but also it lingers and has a lot of bitterness to it and wears your palate out after a while. So what we're trying to really do, as I talked about earlier with our mission, is showcase these lagers in a way where you can enjoy them over a long period of time, and also you can experience the ingredients in different ways. So the next beer you're going to have has the Cascade hops in it, and the Cascade is a signature hop in West Coast IPAs. It's one of those hops that's really piney and aromatic, but at the same time has a lot of bitterness that follows with it. So it was a really tricky hop to brew with. It was one where it was tough to get it more in the nose than in the finish of the beer. We're able to bring in some other hops to complement it, but this one really has a lot more of that pine note to it, and really showcases the ingredients in a way that you might not be able to get them in your typical West Coast IPA. And that's what, as we move through the rest of the beers, you'll see that kind of go on. Our mission as we develop more and more beers is to look at either styles that we enjoy drinking or that are emerging in popularity, and really put a lager take, our own take on them. Another beer you'll be trying is a Gose, and that's not a traditional Gose. It's one that we really tried to strive to get a totally different experience with it, but still have the same idea behind the style. Something that really passionate about when it comes to lagers. These beers are 28 to 60-day beers. We could probably double or triple our brewing capacity if we wanted to, just by switching over to ales. And that was one thing that we had to decide when we first came in the brewery. Do we want to completely abandon lagers and completely abandon the direction we had? Because we were set up to do a lot of lagers, but we were also set up to do some German ales. And we could have pretty much been profitable overnight. Just shut off all the cooling, start making twice as many beers, no problem. But it was something that we felt that there wasn't really an opportunity, there wasn't really any beers out in the marketplace that we could really find on a regular basis that were fulfilling this lager format. And it was a style that we really enjoyed. We always found ourselves coming back to lagers and always wondering, why are we always coming back to the same lagers? Why don't we have a variety of them to try from? So as you keep drinking our beers over the next day and weeks and months and years, you'll start seeing more. We'll be bringing out some new beers here in the next months or two, and you'll start seeing newer takes on it. We just released a rye IPL. It was a real nice take on a rye beer, so you'll see that one coming out here in the next couple months. But start talking about the Cascaderade a little bit more. So the Cascaderade, it's going to be a step up from the dry hop lager. It's going to have a lot more of those citrus and pine notes, a lot more pine. We use a little bit more roasted malts in it to balance that bitterness. And once again, it's going to be nice and clear and crisp. So you're going to find some commonality between all the beers as I keep preaching. So, cheers. This one's, I believe, 50. It does. We use some more roasted malts on that one than the dry hop lager. Typically, when you're bringing in more robust hops, you have to bring in some more robust malts as well to keep that balance. And the balance between the hops and the malts, the sweetness of the malts and the bitterness of the hops, we always try to keep in sync. So you'll typically see as we make hoppier beers, we'll probably have a little bit more roasted malts in there to kind of counteract that, especially in our bigger hoppier beers. Does that answer your question? What do you guys think of this one? Does this one fulfill a little bit more of that IPA experience? Yeah?
What's the IBU?
50.
That's it?
Yeah, so the hops really come through. We don't have to use as much hops in our beers because of the lager format. It really allows the ingredients and the hops to shine off of it. So you're going to get a lot fuller flavored beer without having to use much of them. That's what allows us to have that balance between the beers. We work with some other breweries in the past on, we have large facilities, and so we were doing some contract brewing, and some of the brewers would come in and they wanted to put in 10 times more hops than originally they wanted, and we're like, this isn't even soluble in the liquid. And they're like, nope, more is better, more hops better. We want this to be 150 IBU hop bomb, and it's a really popular brewery. They're doing great things, but you're sitting there drinking, and it's like after a couple of sips, you get all hops but nothing else. And so we really want to have a full beer experience with all of our beers. When we're showcasing it, it might accentuate one of the ingredients, but you're always going to get hopefully a pleasant experience with that as well with all the other ingredients in the beer. Does anyone have any questions in the back? It is. It's 6.6%. Good question. So the Cascaderade is 6.6%. The draft lager is 5%. And the Pilsner is 5.3%. So this is going to be a next step up. It's a little bit on the lighter side for a West Coast IPA, but we wanted to keep that sessionability and that drinkability to this beer. The Cascaderade name comes from the Cascade hops. So the Cascade hops is signature hop, the West Coast IPA, grows at the base of the Cascade Mountain Range up in Oregon and Washington, and it travels down to Northern California, and we try to give it a little bit more refreshing take on the Cascade hop. So that's where the Cascaderade comes from, the name of it. So if you see the label, you'll see a map of the Cascade Mountain Range in Northern California. Any other questions? Cheers. So the next beer is the Gose, and we'll talk a little bit about how we got to that beer, and then we'll talk about how it tastes when you guys get it in your hands. But the Gose is an ancient German-style beer that never went out of play in the Rheinheitsgebot. It was from a part of Germany more than north that was farther away from the Bavarian king, and he couldn't eliminate the style, so it maintained itself, and it was brewed in a town that had a little bit of salty water to it. And typically the beer at the times were always sour just because of cleanliness. They didn't have the ability to brew clean beers. And so it was always kind of a sour, salty beer that is really starting to gain popularity with a lot of the sour beers that are becoming popular around the industry now, and shandies and these other citrus beers. So we wanted to be able to bring a nice, refreshing summertime beer that you can enjoy with some tartness and some citrus and some hops, but also didn't overwhelm you with sourness or didn't overwhelm you with saltiness or also didn't wear on your palate. And nice thing about a wheat beer, which Gose is, it's a wheat beer. It's a salted wheat beer, actually. And the wheat fully ferments out, gives a little bit thinner mouthfeel to it. So you get a nice experience out of it. We use our lager yeast instead of a hef yeast. So a lot of times you have a wheat beer, you're going to get a German yeast, German wheat beer yeast, or American wheat beer yeast, and that yeast adds a little bit more of a heavier mouthfeel or frothier mouthfeel to it, where this one's going to have a nice thin mouthfeel to it, and it's going to have a little bit of citrus to it. We teamed up with a local farmer, and the farmer has an organic citrus farm outside of our brewery, and we went over there, picked a bunch of citrus, zested it, and brought it into this beer in a zesting format. So we didn't actually bring the juice into it. We didn't brew with it. We brought the zest in at the end during the lagering part of it. So by bringing it in during the cold stage of the process, it gives it a little bit more nuanced flavor profile. So you get a little bit more in the aroma. You get a little bit less sourness, a little more of a tartness to it than sour. And then the salt really rounds it all out. And we actually dry hopped it with some Mosaic and some Sriracha Ace hops that have a little more of a fruitier, citrusy characteristic to it. So all this comes together in a nice way to showcase traditional style in a non-traditional way. It's a 6% beer, and it's a little bit bigger than your traditional Gose. Goses are typically 2, 3, 4%, real light, easy drinking beer. But we wanted to kind of bring this into a format that you can enjoy one or two of them, or if you want to sip on them throughout the day or the summer, that it'll complement anything you're really doing. So it's a style that we released, and it was one of the most popular beers we've released to date. It really started taking off. It seems like people are really looking for that type of experience within their beer. They're looking to have a little bit, for some reason, fruit beers are really becoming popular right now. So we wanted to bring that experience of the beer without adding fruit to the beer, without having it be too sweet or too tart. So we really tried to hit just the middle. And that kind of leads a little bit into what we saw into the marketplace, is that Goldilocks scenario. We saw that you have beers that are really big and hoppy, alcoholic, or you have beers that are really light, your macro beers and stuff, but there wasn't as much in the middle, and that's starting to get filled in a little bit more. But that's really where we're trying to aim all of our beers. So you have a question? We use lemon and oranges. Yes. Yes. I mean, it definitely is not a forefront of the experience of the beer. No, it's not. And that was something that Goses typically are not hopped very much at all. Sour beers typically aren't hopped at all. They're usually just hopped in the boil. So we wanted to bring in a hop characteristic that added a little bit of bitterness just because it was a little bit bigger beer, but also complemented the same citrus profiles. And so the Sriracha Ace is kind of a little more of a lemony profile hop, and then the Mosaic's a little more fruity. So it's not a very hop beer. I think it's about 16 IBUs or so, 14 IBUs. So it's pretty mild on the hop experience, and that's the reason why. The style itself was never really a hoppy beer, and it's kind of atypical to bring in hops into this beer in general. Lost in it. Yeah. It's in the background. I was talking a little bit about a rye beer we've been working on. We just released locally, and we'll be hopefully bringing it out here in the next couple months, and that one features mainly Mosaic hops. So you might be up your alley if you're looking for a Mosaic hop experience. We brought in some heirloom, German heirloom rye, and then we dry hopped with a bunch of Mosaic hops. It's a real nice beer. So that's one you can keep an eye out for in the future months. Is that one of your favorite hops? Yeah. Is everyone familiar with Mosaic hops? Yep. Everyone like them? Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you nailed it. That's the feedback we get from it. It's usually, oh my God, this is so great, and they love it, or what's going on here? Did I get a bad beer, or I get something different wrong? So. Yep. No. Definitely. That's a good that's a good point. I think that goes for all beers in general. Styles are guidelines, and with craft beer, that's just getting blown away. And you think you try a style, and then you try another brewery's version of it, and it's totally different. And there's not a right way or a wrong way. You gotta find what you enjoy. Yeah, good. Yeah, I just saw an article saying that Gose is the most searched beer term on Google right now. So it's, yeah. It's one of those styles that is easier to make than a full sour beer, and that's why I think people are really starting it, because everyone wants to make sour beers. They're difficult. Yeah, a large time commitment. They don't always turn out the way you want. So the Gose is kind of a segue into that style, and gives people that beer experience without having the that full commitment or having to search to find the hard to find beer. So thanks, Chad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's good. It's a good thing. She said it would be really good with fish. And I have to agree. It will add. It'll add the salt to your fries. That's another thing with with all of our beers and trying to develop a sessionable aspect to every beer we make. Wanted to really complement if you're eating, if you're out camping, if you're hanging out with friends. We really try to have them complement any drinking session or occasion. And that's something that's nice with the lager format, and also with having a balanced beer experience. Typically it would be easier for you to pair with things, and you start getting creative ideas. Like she said, she immediately popped in her mind that it was good with fish, and that's the idea. We want the beers to really start spawning your creativity and your idea of how they will fit into your life, instead of saying, that tastes good, but I only can have it, small glass here, and I never want to try it again. No, we really want these to try to fit into any time that you want to have a beer, and for it to really complement what you're doing. So, and that goes for the last beer we're trying here is the Big DIPL. It's a 9%, 90 IBU, double IPL. And real quick about this one, it's all of our beers that you've tried tonight have gone, except for our Pilsner. That one started in 1989. It was one of the original recipes of our brewmaster. He was 5th generation brewmaster, and this was his family recipe. And the only thing we did to it was dial it in to try to bring in ingredients from Germany, got an authentic German yeast, and really try to make it as true as possible and authentic as possible. All our other beers went through our pilot program that they spent, like I said, the Drop Lager spent 4.5 years. Our Cascaderade spent 3 years in there. So we really spend a lot of time in coming up with these beers. It's not something that we try once, put in bottles, and put out. So there, when you ask if, with the Mosaic hop experience, that we really were trying to bring it in the background. We didn't want it to make it the forefront. It was something that we consciously did, and we try to do that about every aspect of our beers. And this Big DIPL is one where we really wanted to make a 9%, 90 IBU, double hoppy beer that was drinkable and smooth and sessionable. And when we're sitting with the whole team, and all the master brewers are saying, "You guys are crazy. This is impossible. You're having big beer. That's not going to be sessionable per se." And we really thought that. By trial and error and really trying to dial it in, we finally found some great hops, some Galaxy hops. They're an Australian hop. They're pretty much the king of hops right now. They have more hop oil content than any other hop in the world. So the hop oils were the ones that drive the aroma. So this beer, you should get a nice tropical, fruity type aroma. The southern hemisphere, the Australian, New Zealand hops have a little more of this tropical fruit, passion fruit, berry type experience than your West Coast hops with the citrus and pine. So what we want to do is give you a big hoppy aroma with that nice passion fruit, tropical fruit note, and then we lager it for over 2 months. And so this is a big commitment. We tie up a tank for almost 2 months and let that beer just really mellow out and we lose a little bit of the hoppy profile, but that 9% beer really smooths out, and you get a real nice drinking experience out of it. So it's one of those 9% beers we feel that as long as you're not driving anywhere afterwards, you can drink a whole bottle of and maybe want another one too. Yeah, so definitely better off sharing the bottle and finishing yourself. We say if you drink too many of these, you get DIPLed, and it will happen, so just be careful. It's one of those things where you want to be responsible and understand what you're drinking, so warning you guys. On that note, once again, nice clear beer. This is one where we did not bring in as much roasted malts to it. So this one is going to have a pretty light hue to it compared to the amount of hops that we bring into it. But the Galaxy hops just have a nice fruitiness that we didn't want to bring in any of the roasted malts against. And so we thought these malts were a great format for the hops to shine off of. So you get a little more fruitiness, a little more tropical fruit, dankiness. And once again, you are going to get a bitterness to this one, but it should have a pretty smooth bitterness and not linger as much. What do you guys think? Did we succeed?
Yeah. For 90 IBUs, that's crazy.
Yeah, it'll sneak up on you in a good way. So how many of you guys are big hop heads? Raise your hands. Double IPAs, IPAs, triple IPAs. What about which one of you guys are on the other side? You guys like more lagers, hefts, non-hoppy beers? It's a good mix. Stouts, yeah, I forgot. I don't have any. We do make a couple dark beers I don't have with me today. We'll be bringing those out.
There's a whole world out there, Patty.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. In the holler tower, really. Interesting. Now, that's one thing we're finding, too, is that when we bring the hops in a later edition, I mean, obviously you get more aromas and stuff, but they are a little bit more enjoyable. Yep. And he was talking about he was dry hopping one of his beers with some Hallertau hops. It's a German noble hop. And the Germans are actually starting to experiment with crossing their hops with West Coast hops. So there's a lot of hops that are coming out now out of Germany that are crossbred with West Coast hops. And you get this fruity, piney experience with the kind of grassy, herbal experience out of the German hops. So they're really interesting. Keep an eye out for that. One of them is called Mandarina Bavaria, and there's a couple other ones out there you can keep an eye out for. They're real nice hops. And we've been experimenting with those too, so you might be able to try those in some of our future beers. Yep. Not really. So where you can find these beers for your guys' homework. That's the best homework I've ever heard. Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. I got what you're saying. We only sell our beer here. So we only sell our beer in California. And Cicero's. We have it. We sell our beer only in California and Missouri right now. We did have distribution around the whole country at one point, kind of spotty. But when we decided to come into the brewery, we pulled it all back. Really wanted to concentrate on dialing the quality of our beers in, really focusing locally and moving out. And so as we were looking to expand into Oregon and other states around, Washington, Nevada, Arizona and stuff, they just either had really competitive markets, non-existing markets, and then as we started coming out here and visiting some of our partners and stuff, we started falling in love with, the people, the place, and everyone was very receptive. You have a nice blend of, people are looking for hoppy beers, for lighter beers, and everything in between, and just kind of started checking off all the boxes. So right now, you only can find our beer in California and in Missouri.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's probably going to stay like that until we kind of decide to move into another state. We're looking at maybe one more next year, but for right now, we're really focusing on keeping that quality and that supply. We're about 35% capacity. When the founders decided to expand outside of a brew pub, they built a giant commercial brewery that never got expanded into. So we do have plenty of room to grow. So in terms of being able to consistently get our beer, you should have it available year-round and ongoing. Yeah. That is actually not necessarily a lie. We heard about the beer school. Dave over here, one of our partners in town, he sent me a link to it about a year and a half ago, and I was impressed. Like, there's nothing like this in California. Why not? And I talked to places that have a format like this. Hey, can we get together a group? Let's talk about beer. It's like, no, they just want to come in here and drink pints for $2 or something, you know. And so it's great. So the reception has been great, and people are really genuinely looking for a good beer. They really want to learn about them and enjoy them, and so it's been a great experience, and we're really excited to be out here. And thanks for being so hospitable and so welcoming, and we're going to keep bringing more and more good beer out here.